Hello, welcome back. This week's episode is going to be about the RAW versus JPEG argument. So the more you're in the photographic community, the more that you'll realize that there is an ongoing battle as to what's better, JPEG or RAW. I'm just going to shed a little bit of light onto you as to what those two things are. Because you might be like, what the heck's RAW and what makes a JPEG a JPEG, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to try and push my views on you or to push my preferences on you, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of information to help you make your own decision. So stay tuned. We're going to check that out, and it's going to be all gravy, baby. All right, so first we're going to start off by talking about what is RAW, because a lot of you might not know what RAW is. You have your settings on your camera, and one says RAW. It's capital R-A-W, RAW. So I'm not even sure what it stands for, or if it even stands for anything, but I've always heard that it's likened to the fact that it is a unbaked image. It's not cooked. It hasn't had everything. It hasn't had everything set in. It's malleable, so you can change things later. The raw image file houses so much more information because it hasn't been compressed yet. It hasn't been broken down to become a JPEG. Raw image files are about 3 times as big as far as their megabits go, or their storage space they're going to take up. It's about 3 times as much as a JPEG because it compresses to become a JPEG. When it's becoming a JPEG, your camera throws out information. It throws out, a lot of the color depth. JPEGs are 8-bit color depth, and RAW is 12-bit color depth. 8-bit, you're like, that's only 4 bits, but it's so much more information. It's just an extreme amount of information that your camera is giving up to become a JPEG. Now, quite honestly, a lot of times it's hard to even tell the difference, like to tell the difference, oh, this is RAW and this is JPEG. If you hold 2 pictures next to each other, you can shoot your camera in RAW and JPEG mode. And if you were to do it and hold the 2 pictures next to each other, a lot of times it's indistinguishable to your eye as to what the difference is. To me, the importance of a RAW image comes in when when you've shot them wrong. It's a lot easier to correct a RAW image that was shot incorrectly. You can change the exposure. The exposure's not set. You can go, a half a stop to even 1.5 stops, change a raw image and fix its exposure even. So you can fix the exposure, you can fix the white balance. Nothing is set in it. The contrast, the color, the colors, the hue, the saturation, none of that stuff is set. And so you can adjust it without destroying anything in the image. Without changing pixels that are already set. So nothing's set, so you just change these variables in your picture, and then your picture, when it's ready to be converted into a TIFF or whatever you use to print it, it'll have far more quality once you get it to where you want it to be. Now again, the drawback of RAW is the huge file size. That's one of the major drawbacks right off the bat, is it's a huge file size. Another thing is a lot of times your camera, pretty much all the time, your camera doesn't shoot as fast when you're shooting RAW because it has to put these giant files onto your memory card. When you shoot JPEG, it takes that giant file and it breaks it down and it adds all the things that you want it to do. It seems like it's doing more, but it's quicker because it's just jettisoning information, and it does it in fraction of a second, and it bakes them into these JPEGs and then puts them onto your memory card as these smaller things. When you have the bigger, more information, it has to write that all to your memory card, which before it wouldn't even be writing it to your memory card. Now it's got to write it all to your memory card, so you're taking longer to get to your next picture, and sometimes you have to wait. Your camera has to catch up with you if you're doing RAW. So, if there's all these great things about RAW and all this, RAW is so good, and RAW, there's all this information and all this stuff, why doesn't everyone shoot RAW? And the answer to that, I believe, isn't just the memory, because the memory, it does take space. Actually, it could quite possibly be just the memory. No, but one other thing is that when you change it, like I said, sometimes it's indistinguishable, the quality in it. It's only when you need to correct it, or if you're going to get like way out crazy with it on Photoshop or something like that. A lot of people don't use Photoshop, especially beginning photographers. They take their pictures, they get them printed at the shop, which is fine, And if you do use Photoshop, a lot of times, if you take a JPEG, it's fine. If you're not going to develop it super huge, it's going to be fine for you. If you're not planning on putting them in galleries, if you're taking pictures of your kids and you're going to put them on home in your wall and you're getting 8x10s, there's really no reason to shoot RAW. The drawbacks of it are too large. It doesn't outweigh the positive, doesn't outweigh the negative when it comes to just doing stuff like that. I, for the most part, shoot JPEG. I shoot JPEG all the time. Like I said, I wasn't going to push my views on you, but for a long time I was all about JPEG, and I tell people, you know, it's all about JPEG. A lot of times people's argument for RAW is if you shoot JPEG, you have to make sure you shoot perfect. And my response has always been, I make sure I shoot perfect anyways, whether I'm shooting RAW or JPEG, no matter what. I'm always trying to shoot perfect. And a lot of times, like people who shoot RAW, and if you decide to shoot RAW, don't get lazy. Don't not shoot perfect because, oh, I can change that later. Changing pictures later a lot of times takes a lot of time. That, you know, why not do it in your camera? Why not do it in that instant? Instead of, hey, I'm going to later go back and do that. Later, I'm going to do that. A lot of times later turns to never. And you have all these raw, unbaked images sitting in your computer. So, you know, there is, you know, different, you know, there are better programs nowadays that are going to help you, you know, convert your RAWs into JPEGs or into TIFFs or whatever. They'll help you bake your RAWs in a better way, but, you know, it still takes time. It takes extra time. So it takes extra space. It takes extra time, and then the positive result, which is you know, the quality in the picture or the ability to take it all these different places. A lot of times you're not going to take your pictures all these different places. You're not going, you know, as far as like, you know, changing them and making them into all these different crazy wacky things. You're not going to do that with all your pictures, you know. So if you're not going to do that, I suggest shooting JPEG. I always suggest shooting perfect. You know, like that was always the argument I always heard. You have to shoot perfect. You have to shoot perfect. So shoot perfect. Make it a point to shoot perfect. Be a perfectionist in your photography. Why are you going to lag back just because RAW can do it for you? Or, you know, oh, I'll fix that in Photoshop. You know, you can fix JPEGs in Photoshop, but that's still not a reason to shoot all lax. You know what I'm saying? You gotta know your stuff and shoot correct. You know, you gotta come correct, baby. You can't be coming all weak up in this piece. You can't come all weak. You can't do your photography on a weak level and say later I'm going to fix that. You know, later turns to never, and that's just the way it is.